ISIS militants in Syria have killed three captives by blowing them up. Activists say the terrorists tied the captives to Roman-era columns in the ancient city of Palmyra.
Ever wondered how crime spreads like a virus?
Alleged members of Venezuela's prison gang Tren de Aragua arriving in El Salvador. The Salvadorian president sharing this dramatic video on X depicting TDA and MS-13 gang members hauled off into a plane, thrown into a bus, and then their heads shaved as they're now being held in an infamous terrorism confinement center.
From drug epidemics to global terrorism, see the shocking patterns that fuel criminal activity.
Now in Brazil, the pandemic is one of the world's most severe, and health workers there have now urged the International Criminal Court to investigate President Bolsonaro's government.
Don't miss out on this eye-opening story. Heroin epidemic. In the 1970s, a small number of people in America became addicted to heroin, but they had no idea what was coming. What started as a few users in isolated areas quickly turned into a massive epidemic. By the 1980s, heroin addiction spread like wildfire across the country. The virus of addiction didn't care about age, race, or location. It didn't stay in just one city. It spread to cities, towns, and even rural areas. At first, the addiction seemed like something that only affected the poorest communities, but soon, it reached the middle class. Drug dealers saw an opportunity and expanded their reach, increasing the supply and making heroin more accessible than ever before. This led to even more people becoming trapped in the addiction cycle. As the virus of addiction spread, it destroyed families, communities, and even entire neighborhoods. The government struggled to stop the wave, but every effort seemed to be too little, too late. With each passing year, the epidemic grew. By 1990s, heroin was everywhere, and its spread was unstoppable. What was once a minor issue turned into a nationwide crisis, showing how crime, like a virus, can take hold of society and spread beyond what anyone could ever predict. Ban the Box. In the early 2000s, a movement called Ban the Box emerged with the goal of giving ex-convicts a fair chance at finding employment. The idea was simple: remove the checkbox that asked about criminal records on job applications, allowing individuals to be judged based on their skills rather than their past mistakes. At first, it seemed like a positive change for those seeking a second chance, but it had unintended consequences. While some companies embraced the movement, others found new ways to discriminate. Instead of checking the box, many employers began using other methods to gather information about criminal histories, leading to a more hidden form of bias. This shift allowed reoffending behavior to spread, as those with criminal records found it difficult to break the cycle of crime. As the years passed, the Ban the Box movement grew, spreading to more states and cities. However, this wave of progress inadvertently created an environment where past offenders were still denied opportunities, pushing many back toward a life of crime. The system's failure to truly support these individuals made it clear, despite good intentions, crime could still spread like a virus, infecting not only individuals but society as a whole. Gang spread. In the 1980s, a dangerous gang known as MS-13 was born in California. Initially, it started with a small group of immigrants, but this gang quickly expanded its reach. The virus of violence and crime spread rapidly as members recruited more individuals, and their activities soon stretched far beyond the borders of California. By the 1990s, MS-13 had spread to Central America, including El Salvador, and its influence grew worldwide. The gang's criminal operations, from drug trafficking to extortion, became more organized and widespread. MS-13 wasn't just a local issue anymore. It had become an international epidemic. With its brutal tactics and connections, the gang continued to infect communities, even spreading into other countries like Mexico and Canada. This violence and crime spread like a virus as new recruits took on the gang's ways, continuing the cycle. The spread of MS-13 was like a shadow that followed its members, infecting new places and people as it moved. Law enforcement struggled to keep up with the ever-expanding gang, proving that crime, like a virus, could adapt and spread in ways no one could predict or stop. White-collar crime. In the 2000s, the world witnessed a surge in white-collar crime. led by some of the biggest names in business and finance. What began as isolated incidents of fraud and insider trading soon escalated into massive financial scandals. The collapse of Enron in 2001 was a wake-up call, exposing how deep the virus of corporate crime had spread. As one of the largest energy companies in the world fell apart, it was clear that this issue wasn't limited to small-time criminals. Other corporate giants followed suit, with WorldCom and Lehman Brothers also crashing down due to fraudulent activities. Each scandal revealed how easy it was for high-powered individuals to manipulate systems and deceive the public. These actions weren't just limited to the companies themselves. They had a ripple effect, shaking the global economy. As one scandal spread, others followed. The virus of corporate fraud infected investors, employees, and even governments. Despite efforts to regulate and prevent further crimes, the spread continued, with new methods and tactics emerging. White-collar crime proved that, like any virus, it could evolve and spread through the most secure systems, affecting millions in ways no one could have predicted. Cybercrime spread. In the 1990s, the internet began to revolutionize the world, bringing countless opportunities. However, with it came a dangerous virus, cybercrime. What started as isolated incidents of hacking quickly grew into a global epidemic. The first major wave came with phishing attacks and malware, where cybercriminals targeted personal information and bank accounts. By the early 2000s, cybercrime became an everyday threat, affecting millions of individuals across the globe. As technology advanced, so did the methods of cybercriminals. Ransomware attacks and data breaches spread like wildfire, affecting major corporations and even government institutions. No one was immune. Just like a virus, cybercrime adapted and evolved, infecting everything from email accounts to entire computer systems. The more connected the world became, the more the cybercriminals found new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. By the 2010s, cybercrime had become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Attacks became more sophisticated, and entire cities were held hostage by hackers. The spread of cybercrime was unstoppable. From phishing emails to massive data breaches, it was clear that the virus of cybercrime had infiltrated every part of our digital lives. The more we relied on technology, the more vulnerable we became to the growing threat. Copycat killers. In the 1970s, the world was shocked by the actions of notorious serial killers like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy. Their brutal crimes captivated the public, making them infamous names in criminal history. However, their influence didn't stop there. The way these killers operated spread like a virus, inspiring others to follow in their footsteps. The concept of a copycat killer became a terrifying reality. As the media covered the crimes of Bundy and Gacy extensively, their methods and tactics were broadcasted for the world to see. Soon, other criminals began to imitate them. It was as if the pattern of murder had been copied, spreading across different states. The killers didn't just replicate the crimes, they adopted the same psychological tactics to terrorize their victims and evade capture. By the 1980s, the phenomenon of copycat killers had spread further. The media's portrayal of these killers inadvertently allowed their influence to grow, as others saw the fame and infamy attached to their crimes. As the virus of violence spread, it created a new type of criminal, one who wanted to emulate the success of the most famous killers in history. This terrifying pattern showed how crime, like a virus, could be passed from one person to another, infecting even the most unlikely individuals. Terrorism spread. In the 1990s, terrorism began to spread beyond national borders, reaching new levels of global impact. Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, was a key player in this spread. Initially based in Afghanistan, their radical ideology and methods rapidly spread through the Middle East and parts of Africa. What began as isolated attacks turned into global acts of terrorism, with their influence spreading across the world. In 2001, the 9/11 attacks shocked the world, proving how far terrorism had spread. It wasn't just an isolated attack. It was a symbol of how terrorism, like a virus, could infect entire societies. After 9/11 events, the spread intensified as terrorist organizations like ISIS used social media and propaganda to recruit people worldwide, turning the fight against terrorism into a global battle. By the 2010s, terrorism had become a global epidemic. Attacks in places like Paris, Brussels, and London showed that the virus of extremism had taken root everywhere, adapting to new environments and affecting people across cultures and continents. Want to know how criminals make billions every year? Don't miss our next video, The Economics of Crime. Hit subscribe now, and stay tuned for more exclusive insights you can't afford to miss.